The snow came down so thick that Willow Daniels could no longer see the hoof prints of the wagon that had abandoned her 2 hours ago. And she knew with a terrible certainty that she was going to die out here in this white wilderness. Her fingers had gone numb inside her thin gloves, and her traveling dress, fine for a September journey through Arizona territory, but worthless against this freak October blizzard, clung to her shivering frame like a shroud. She stumbled forward through drifts that rose past her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps that turned to ice crystals in the air before her face. The man she had trusted, the man who had promised to take her to Hallbrook where her aunt supposedly waited, had simply stopped the wagon when the storm grew fierce, taken her small trunk of belongings, and told her to get out. When she had protested, when she had begged, he had pulled a pistol and cocked it, and Willow had climbed down into the snow rather than die with a bullet in her chest. That had been hours ago, or maybe just 1 hour. Time had lost all meaning in the white chaos. She could not feel her feet anymore, could barely lift them to take another step. The wind screamed around her like a living thing, tearing at her hair, which had come loose from its pins and now whipped across her face in dark tangles. 22 years old, and this was how it would end, frozen in a snowstorm in Arizona of all places, where she had been told the sun always shone and the desert stretched forever. The irony might have made her laugh if her jaw had not been clenched so tight against the cold. She fell, her legs simply giving out beneath her. The snow received her almost gently, a cold embrace that promised rest. Willow tried to push herself up, but her arms would not obey. Perhaps it would not be so terrible, she thought, to simply close her eyes, to sleep. The cold was not so bad now. In fact, she almost felt warm. The sound of a horse cut through the storm's howl. Willow thought it must be a dream, a hallucination brought on by the freezing, but then she heard it again, closer now. A voice called out, deep and urgent, though she could not make out the words. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, turning her over. Through the veil of snow and her own failing vision, she saw a face above her, weathered and concerned, framed by a hat crusted with white. "Madam, can you hear me?" "Madam?" She tried to speak, but only managed a small sound, barely a whisper. The man did not hesitate. He scooped her up as though she weighed nothing, cradling her against a chest that radiated blessed warmth even through his heavy coat. "I got you," he said, and his voice was rough but kind. "I got you now. You are not dying today." The world became a blur of movement. She felt herself being lifted onto a horse, felt the man climb up behind her, one arm locked around her waist to hold her secure. The horse moved forward at a pace faster than she would have thought possible in such conditions. But the man seemed to know where he was going, even though Willow could see nothing but white in every direction. She leaned back against him, drawing on his warmth, and allowed herself to drift in and out of consciousness. When next she became aware, they were no longer moving. The man carried her again, and she heard the creak of a door, felt the absence of wind. Then she was being lowered onto something soft, and the man was pulling off her gloves, her boots, checking her fingers and toes with careful efficiency. She heard him curse softly. "Frostbite on 3 toes," he muttered. "Fingers are not so bad. You are lucky I found you when I did." He looked up at her face, and Willow saw his eyes properly for the first time. They were gray, the color of storm clouds, set in a face that might have been anywhere from 30 to 40 years old, with lines carved deep around his mouth and eyes. Dark hair shot through with gray fell across his forehead, and several days' worth of beard shadowed his jaw. "I am going to get you warm, madam, but I need to do it slow. Too fast and it will hurt worse. Do you understand?" Willow managed a small nod. "Good. My name is Nathan Keller. You are in my cabin about 5 miles north of Snowflake. That storm came out of nowhere, caught everyone by surprise. What in blazes were you doing out there, abandoned? Willow managed to say through chattering teeth. Wagon driver. He took my things and left me. Something dark and dangerous flashed across Nathan Keller's face. Did he now? You got a name for this wagon driver, Samuels. Henry Samuels. He said he would take me to Holbrook. Nathan stood abruptly and walked across the small cabin to a potbelly stove where a fire burned hot and bright. He poured something from a pot into a tin cup and brought it back to her. Drink this. It is broth. Slow sips. Willow took the cup with trembling hands. The broth was warm and salty and the best thing she had ever tasted. As she drank, she looked around the cabin. It was small but well built, with chinked log walls and a sturdy roof from which no snow leaked despite the storm still raging outside. A narrow bed stood against one wall. A rough-hewn table and 2 chairs occupied the center of the single room, and various tools and supplies hung from pegs or rested on shelves. It was sparse and utilitarian, the home of a man who lived alone. Thank you, Willow said when she had finished half the broth. You saved my life. Nathan had settled himself in one of the chairs, watching her with those storm-gray eyes. Lucky I was heading back from checking my traps when I spotted you. Lucky and nothing more. Another hour and you would have been past saving. He paused, seeming to consider his next words. I have been lonely too, so I understand what drives a person to trust the wrong folks. My wife died 3 years back. Cholera. Since then, it has just been me and these 4 walls and the sky above. When winter comes, sometimes I go weeks without seeing another soul, so I reckon I know something about being alone. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with a sadness that Willow recognized because she carried the same burden. My parents died last spring, she said quietly. House fire back in Missouri. I had no one left, no prospects. A woman alone without money or family does not have many choices. My mother's sister, my aunt, wrote and said she lived in Holbrook, said I could come stay with her. I sold everything we had left and bought passage west. But when I reached Santa Fe, the stage line said they had no record of my ticket for the final leg. Someone had stolen it or the agent cheated me. I do not know. I had just enough money left to hire a wagon to take me the rest of the way. I should have known better. Henry Samuels looked mean from the start, but I was desperate. Nathan's jaw tightened. Samuels is known in these parts. He is a no-good drifter who takes advantage of people when he can. If I see him again, he will answer for leaving you to die. How did you know where to find me? I did not. Pure chance, like I said. But the storm seemed to be coming from the northeast, so I figured if someone was caught in it, the wind would push them west. I rode out in that direction and found your tracks before the snow covered them completely. Followed them until I found you. Willow felt tears prick at her eyes. This stranger had risked his own life to search for someone he did not even know existed. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. Out here, you help folks when they need it. That is just the way of things. Nathan stood and moved to the stove, ladling more broth into her cup. You rest now. Storm should blow itself out by morning, and then we will figure out what comes next. You can have the bed. I will sleep on the floor. I cannot take your bed. You can and you will. You need proper rest to recover, and I have slept on harder surfaces than a cabin floor. His tone brooked no argument. As if her body had been waiting for permission, exhaustion crashed over Willow like a wave. Her eyelids grew impossibly heavy. Nathan took the cup from her hands before she could drop it, and she felt him pulling blankets up around her shoulders. Sleep, he said softly. You are safe now. Willow slept. She woke to gray morning light filtering through a small window and the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Every muscle in her body ached, and when she tried to sit up, pain shot through her feet. She gasped, and immediately Nathan was at her side, easing her back down. "Easy now. The frostbite is going to hurt for a while. I cleaned and wrapped your toes during the night. You slept through it, which is good. How are your hands?" Willow flexed her fingers. They were stiff and sore but functional. "They hurt, but I can move them." "Good. Hands are not so bad then. Feet are going to take longer to heal. You are not walking anywhere for at least a few days." He brought her a plate with bacon, beans, and a thick slice of bread. "Eat. You need your strength back." While Willow ate, Nathan moved around the cabin with the easy efficiency of a man long accustomed to taking care of himself. He was tall, she noticed now, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, hard build of someone who worked outdoors for a living. He wore worn denim pants, a flannel shirt that had seen better days, and boots that were scuffed but well maintained. Everything about him spoke of practicality and self-reliance. "The storm passed in the night," Nathan said as he poured coffee for both of them. "Left about 2 feet of snow on the ground, which is unusual for October even up here in the high country. It will melt fast once the sun gets to work on it. Few days and it will be mostly gone except in the shadows. You said we are near Snowflake, about 5 miles north and west of town. I run a trap line through this territory during the winter months, hunt and track for hire other times. Make enough to get by." He settled into the chair across from the bed, cradling his coffee cup in both hands. "Your aunt in Holbrook, do you have her address?" "I have a letter from her. It was in my coat pocket." Willow felt at her coat, which someone, Nathan she realized with a flush, had draped over a peg near the stove to dry. "My coat." Nathan retrieved it and handed it to her. Willow dug into the inner pocket and pulled out a folded letter, slightly damp but intact. She opened it and read the address at the top. "Mrs. Margaret Porter, care of the Imperial Hotel, Holbrook." "Imperial Hotel burned down last summer," Nathan said quietly. "I was passing through Holbrook in July and saw the ruins. Whole place went up, took 3 other buildings with it." The words hit Willow like a physical blow. "Burned? I am sorry. If your aunt was staying there. She might have moved. She might be somewhere else in Holbrook." "She might," Nathan agreed, but his tone was gentle in a way that suggested he did not believe it. "When you are well enough to travel, I will take you to Holbrook myself. We can make inquiries. If she is there, we will find her." Willow stared down at the letter in her hands, at her aunt's neat handwriting, and felt the full weight of her situation settle on her shoulders. She was alone in a territory she did not know, with no money, no possessions beyond the clothes on her back, and nowhere to go. The aunt who had promised her a home might be dead, and she was entirely dependent on the kindness of a stranger who had no obligation to help her beyond what he had already done. "I have nothing to pay you with," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I cannot repay you for saving me or for your hospitality." Nathan set his coffee cup down and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I did not ask for payment. I do not want payment. You were in trouble and I helped. That is all there is to it. But I cannot just impose on you indefinitely. You are not imposing. Truth is, it is nice to have someone to talk to besides myself and my horse. Like I said last night, I have been lonely too. 3 years is a long time to live with only ghosts for company." He rubbed a hand over his face, looking suddenly weary. "My wife, Clara, she made this cabin feel like a home. After she died, it was just a place to sleep and eat, a shell. Having another person here, it reminds me what it was like before." Something in his voice, a raw honesty, made Willow's throat tighten. She understood that loneliness, that sense of being adrift in the world with no anchor. "How long were you married?" 10 years. We built this cabin together, her and me, came out here with nothing but a wagon and a dream of making a life. Clara was tough as nails and twice as sharp. When she died, it felt like the sun went out. Nathan looked away, staring at something only he could see. I am sorry. I do not usually run my mouth like this. There is something about you that makes it easy to talk. I am glad, Willow said softly. I feel the same. You are the first person who has been kind to me since my parents died. Everyone else either ignored me or tried to take advantage. Nathan's eyes met hers, and for a long moment they simply looked at each other, two wounded souls recognizing something kindred in the other. Then Nathan cleared his throat and stood. You should rest more. I need to check my traps and make sure the horse has enough feed. I will be back in a few hours. There is more coffee on the stove if you want it, and help yourself to anything you need. Privy is out back, but with your feet the way they are, you will want to use the chamber pot under the bed. Not fancy, but practical. Willow felt her cheeks heat at the mention of such intimate necessities, but Nathan's manner was matter of fact, neither embarrassed nor presumptuous. He pulled on a heavy coat, settled his hat on his head, and stepped out into the bright morning, closing the door firmly behind him. Alone, Willow took stock of her situation. Her feet throbbed with a deep, persistent ache that made her eyes water when she moved them. Her fingers were stiff but manageable. The rest of her was just bruised and sore from her ordeal in the storm. She was alive, which was more than she had any right to expect. And she was in the company of a good man, a lonely man who had been honest enough to admit his own pain. She thought about Nathan Keller as she sipped her coffee, watching the snow outside the window begin to drip from the eaves as the sun climbed higher. He was handsome in a rough, weathered way, but it was more than that. There was a quiet strength to him, a competence and self-assurance that came from years of surviving on his own terms. And there was kindness in those gray eyes, a decency that showed in his every action. Willow realized with a start that she was attracted to him. It had been so long since she had allowed herself to feel anything like that, so long since she had thought about men as anything other than potential threats or sources of disappointment. But Nathan was different. Nathan had saved her life and asked for nothing in return. She shook her head, trying to clear it. This was foolish. She was in no position to be thinking about attraction or romance. She needed to focus on practical matters, on figuring out what to do with her life now that her plan to live with her aunt had likely fallen apart. But still, the feeling persisted, a small warm glow in her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee or the fire in the stove. Nathan returned in the early afternoon with 2 rabbits and a string of fish. Good haul, he announced, stringing the rabbits up to clean outside. We will eat well tonight. Over the next 3 days, a routine developed. Nathan would rise early and tend to his traps and his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Jasper who weathered the unusual cold with stolid patience. He would return around midday to prepare a meal and check on Willow's feet, changing the bandages and applying a salve that smelled of herbs and grease, but seemed to help with the pain. In the afternoons, he would work on various tasks around the cabin, repairing tools or treating hides, while Willow watched and they talked. They talked about everything. Nathan told her about growing up in Texas, the son of a rancher who had lost everything in the war. He had drifted west after that, working as a cowboy, a scout, a lawman for a brief disastrous stint that ended when he punched a corrupt town mayor and had to leave 2 steps ahead of a warrant. He had met Clara in Colorado, and they had married within a month of meeting, both of them knowing immediately that they had found something rare and precious. Willow told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her father who had been a schoolteacher, and her mother who had taken in sewing to help make ends meet. She told him about the fire, how she had been staying with a friend that night and had returned home to find nothing but ashes, and the sheriff telling her gently that her parents had not made it out. She told him about the months after, living on charity and pity, until her aunt's letter had arrived like a lifeline. "You have had a hard road," Nathan said on the third afternoon. They were sitting at the table, Willow's feet propped on a second chair that Nathan had pulled over. The swelling had gone down and the worst of the pain had faded to a dull ache, too hard for someone so young. "I am 22, that is not so young. Young enough." Nathan smiled slightly. "I am 38. From where I sit, 22 seems like a lifetime ago. You are not so old. Old enough to know better than to do half the foolish things I have done." He reached across the table and, almost without seeming to think about it, took her hand in his. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip gentle but firm. "Willow, I have been thinking about what you said about having nowhere to go. I know it is not proper to suggest this and you are free to say no, but if you want, you could stay here. With me." Willow's heart began to pound. "Stay here." "Not like that," Nathan said quickly, though color rose in his cheeks. "I mean, I would marry you proper if you were willing. I know we have only known each other a few days, but I feel more comfortable with you than I have felt with anyone since Clara died. You are kind and smart, and you have got grit to have survived what you have survived. And I think maybe you feel something similar, or am I wrong about that?" He was not wrong. Willow had been falling for Nathan Keller almost from the moment he had pulled her from the snow, and over these past 3 days that feeling had only grown stronger. But marriage, it seemed so sudden, so reckless. Yet what other option did she have? Even if her aunt was alive in Holbrook, Willow would be a burden, another mouth to feed. And if her aunt was dead, then Willow would be alone again in a strange town with no prospects. But more than that, more than the practicality of it, she wanted to say yes. She wanted to stay here with this good, lonely man and build something together. She wanted to see where these feelings might lead. "You are not wrong," Willow said softly. "I do feel something. I have been trying not to because it seemed foolish, but I cannot help it. You are a good man, Nathan Keller, and I think I could be happy here with you." The smile that spread across Nathan's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. "You mean it. You will marry me, if you are sure that is what you want." "I am sure." Nathan stood, pulling her up with him, careful of her feet. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I know it is fast. I know people will talk. But out here, you take happiness where you find it because life is too short and too hard to do otherwise. We can make a good life together, Willow. I believe that." "So do I," Willow whispered, and then Nathan was kissing her, soft and careful, as though she were something precious that might break. Willow kissed him back, her arms going around his neck, and for the first time since her parents died, she felt like she was home. They were married a week later in Snowflake, a small ceremony performed by the town's preacher in his front parlor with his wife and 2 neighbors as witnesses. Willow wore a simple blue dress that Nathan had purchased for her from the general store, along with proper winter boots and a warm coat. She felt like a princess. Nathan wore a suit that he had clearly pulled from the bottom of his trunk, the fabric smelling of camphor and age, but he had shaved and combed his hair, and Willow thought he was the handsomest man she had ever seen. When he slipped a thin gold band onto her finger, his hand was steady but his eyes were bright with emotion. "I will take care of you," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I promise you that." "I will take care of you too," Willow replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They spent their wedding night in Nathan's cabin, which Willow supposed was now her cabin too. Nathan had clearly tried to make it special, stringing up pine boughs over the doorway and around the window. And there were wildflowers, the last hardy blooms of the season, in a jar on the table. He had cooked a venison roast with potatoes and carrots, and there was even a small cake from the preacher's wife, rich with molasses and spices. After dinner, as they sat together on the bed, Nathan took her hands in his. "I want you to know that we can take this as slow as you need. I do not want you to feel pressured into anything." Willow felt a rush of affection for this careful, considerate man. "I want to be your wife in every way," she said. "I am not afraid." Nathan kissed her then, deeper than before, and Willow lost herself in the warmth of his embrace. He was gentle with her, patient, and if there was pain at first, it was quickly overwhelmed by a sense of connection, of two lonely people finding solace in each other. When they finally lay together afterward, Willow's head on Nathan's chest and his arm around her shoulders, she felt a peace she had not known in longer than she could remember. "I love you," Nathan said into the darkness. "I know it is quick to say it, but it is true. I love you, Willow Keller." Willow Keller. She had a new name now, a new identity. She was no longer Willow Daniels, the orphaned girl with no future. She was Willow Keller, wife of Nathan Keller, and she had a home. "I love you too," she said, and felt him smile against her hair. Winter settled in with a vengeance after that, the unusual October snow proving to be a harbinger of a harsh season. But inside the cabin, there was warmth and laughter and a growing sense of partnership. Willow learned to cook over the potbelly stove, to mend clothes and make soap, and 100 other tasks that frontier life demanded. Nathan taught her to shoot, handing her a rifle one clear November morning and setting up targets against a snowbank. "Every woman out here should know how to handle a gun," he said. "I am gone sometimes for hours when I check the traps. I need to know you can defend yourself if trouble comes." Willow proved to be a decent shot, better than Nathan had expected. "My father taught me the basics when I was a girl," she explained. "He said knowledge was never wasted, even if it was not ladylike. Your father was a wise man." They fell into a rhythm, a pattern of days that felt both ancient and new. Nathan would wake before dawn and stoke the fire, then slip back into bed to hold Willow for a few more stolen minutes of warmth before the demands of the day pulled them apart. They would breakfast together, talking about the work that needed doing, the supplies that were running low, the weather that was always a concern. Then Nathan would head out to his traps while Willow tackled the indoor chores. When he returned, they would prepare the evening meal together, standing side by side at the stove, bumping hips and sharing small smiles. Evenings were Willow's favorite time. They would sit together by the fire, Willow mending or knitting while Nathan worked on carving or repairing equipment. Sometimes Nathan would read aloud from one of the 3 books he owned, a battered copy of Robinson Crusoe, a volume of Shakespeare's plays, and a collection of Robert Burns' poetry. His voice was deep and pleasant, and Willow loved to listen to him even when she did not always follow the meaning of the words. Other evenings, they simply talked, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Nathan told her about the things he had seen in his wandering years, the beauty of the Rocky Mountains at sunrise, the violence of a cattle stampede, the loneliness of night watch under a sky full of stars. Willow told him about her secret dreams of becoming a teacher like her father, of having a school of her own someday. "Why secret?" Nathan asked. "Because it seemed impossible. A woman with no education beyond what her father taught her, no money, no prospects. Who would hire me to teach their children?" "You are educated," Nathan said firmly. "Your father saw to that, and you are my wife now. If you want to teach, we will find a way to make it happen. Maybe not this year, but someday. I promise you that." Willow felt tears prick her eyes. "You believe in me." "I believe in you," Nathan confirmed, pulling her close. "You are the strongest woman I have ever known, and I am honored to be your husband." Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly together. Nathan surprised her with a length of calico cloth for a new dress, and a pair of delicate earrings he had purchased from a traveling merchant. Willow gave him a shirt she had sewn herself, the stitches painstaking and careful, and a new sheath for his hunting knife that she had tooled with a design of pine trees and mountains. "These are perfect," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are perfect." On Christmas night, they made love slowly and tenderly, taking their time with each other, learning the contours and rhythms of their shared passion. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the warm cocoon of their bed, Nathan said, "I want children with you. Is that something you want too?" Willow thought about it, imagining a child with Nathan's gray eyes and her dark hair, a small person made from their love. "Yes," she said, "I want that very much." "Then we will have a family," Nathan said, kissing her forehead. "You and me and children to fill this cabin with noise and joy." Clara and I never had that chance. She was expecting once, early in our marriage, but she lost the baby. After that, it never happened again. But with you, maybe it will be different. "It will be different," Willow said with a certainty she could not explain. "I feel it," and she was right. By January, she had missed her monthly courses, and by February, there was no doubt. She was pregnant. Nathan was overjoyed, his usually reserved demeanor cracking to reveal a boyish excitement that made Willow laugh. "A baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to have a baby." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Willow told him, and she believed it with all her heart. But pregnancy brought worries too. They were miles from town, miles from a doctor or a midwife. If something went wrong, they would be on their own. Nathan fretted about this constantly, until Willow finally took his face in her hands and said, "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am strong and healthy and young. I will be fine. We will be fine." "I cannot lose you," Nathan said, his voice breaking. "I cannot, Willow. You are everything to me. You will not lose me. I am not going anywhere." As winter began to loosen its grip and the first hints of spring appeared in the high country, Nathan made a decision. "We are going to town," he announced one morning in early March. "I want you to meet the doctor. Let him check you over. And I want to stock up on supplies so we have everything we might need when your time comes." They made the trip to Snowflake on a clear, cold day, riding double on Jasper with Willow seated in front of Nathan, his arms around her holding the reins. The town was small but bustling, a scattering of buildings along a single main street with the dark volcanic peaks of the White Mountains visible in the distance. People stared as they rode through, and Willow realized that she must be an object of curiosity, the mysterious woman who had married Nathan Keller. The doctor was an older man named Ackerman, with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined Willow thoroughly and pronounced her fit and healthy. "Baby is growing well," he said. "I would estimate you are about 3 months along, which puts your due date sometime in late August or early September. You are young and strong, Mrs. Keller. I see no reason why this should not be a normal, healthy birth. But I want you to come back to town when you are closer to your time. I would rather be nearby just in case." "We will," Nathan said firmly. "Whatever is safest for my wife." After the doctor, they visited the general store where Nathan bought what seemed to Willow like half the inventory. Cloth for baby clothes and diapers, thread and needles, extra lamp oil, coffee, sugar, flour, salt, dried beans, canned goods, and a dozen other items. The storekeeper, a round man named Peterson, beamed at them. "Heard you got married, Nathan. About time you found yourself a good woman." And a baby on the way too. Congratulations to you both." "Thank you kindly," Nathan said, his hand finding Willow's and squeezing gently. They ate lunch at the town's small restaurant, a treat since neither of them had tasted anyone else's cooking in months. Over plates of stew and fresh bread, Willow asked, "Do you ever think about moving to town? It would be easier in some ways being close to other people, to the doctor and the store." Nathan considered this, chewing thoughtfully. "I have thought about it," he admitted. "But I am not much of a town person, Willow. I like the quiet, the space. I like being able to step outside and not see another soul for miles. Does that bother you? Do you want to live in town?" "I want to live wherever you are," Willow said honestly. "I love our cabin. I love the life we have." "I was just curious." "We will need to think about it when the baby gets older," Nathan said. "If you want to teach, we will need to be closer to a school, and children need other children to play with. But for now, I am happy where we are. So am I." They rode home as the sun was setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Willow leaned back against Nathan's chest, feeling safe and content. This was her life now, this wild, beautiful country and this good man and the child growing inside her. It was more than she had ever dared to hope for. Spring arrived in earnest, the snow melting rapidly, revealing the brown grass and bare earth beneath. Wildflowers began to bloom, brilliant splashes of color against the drab landscape. Nathan planted a small garden behind the cabin, turning the earth with a spade and showing Willow how to plant seeds in neat rows. "Tomatoes, beans, squash, and potatoes," he explained. "Basics that will grow well up here if we are lucky. Fresh vegetables will be good for you and the baby." Willow's belly began to swell in earnest as the weeks passed, a firm round curve that Nathan loved to rest his hand on in the evenings. "I can feel movement," he whispered in awe one night in May. "The baby is moving." "I know. Feels like butterflies," Willow said, smiling at his wonder. They spent long hours preparing for the baby's arrival. Nathan built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and rubbing it with oil until it gleamed. Willow sewed tiny gowns and blankets from the cloth Nathan had bought, her stitches small and careful. They cleared a corner of the cabin for the baby's things, and the sight of that little cradle waiting made everything feel suddenly real. "Boy or girl, do you think?" Nathan asked one evening as they sat outside watching the sunset. "I do not know. Does it matter to you?" "Not even a little bit. Healthy, that is all I care about. Healthy baby and healthy wife." "We will both be fine," Willow assured him, though she had her own fears. She had heard stories, every woman had, about births that went wrong, about women who died or babies who did not survive. But she pushed those thoughts away and focused on the positive. She was young and strong. Dr. Ackerman had said so. Everything would be fine. Summer blazed hot and dry, the complete opposite of the harsh winter they had endured. Nathan worried about the garden in the heat, hauling water from the creek to keep the plants alive. He also worried about Willow, insisting she stay out of the direct sun during the hottest part of the day. "You and the baby need to stay cool," he said, his brow furrowed with concern. "I am fine," Willow insisted, but she did as he asked because it made him feel better. In July, a traveling preacher and his wife passed through, heading to Snowflake to hold a revival meeting. Nathan invited them to stay the night, and over dinner the preacher's wife, a matronly woman named Ruth, gave Willow advice about the birth. "You will want to have clean linens ready, lots of them," Ruth said, "and string for tying off the cord. A sharp knife that has been boiled clean. Water, lots of water, some hot for washing, some cool for drinking. And you will want someone with you, someone who knows what to do. Will the doctor be there? We are planning to go to town when the time gets close," Nathan said. "I am not taking any chances." "Good," Ruth said approvingly. A first baby, you want someone experienced nearby. Do you have a name picked out? Not yet, Willow said. We have been arguing about it. I like Thomas for a boy, Nathan said, after my father. And I like Rose for a girl after my mother, Willow countered. Her middle name was Rose. Both fine names, Ruth said, smiling. You will figure it out when you meet the little one. Sometimes babies come out and they just look like their name. You know what they should be called right away. After the preacher and his wife left the next morning, Nathan and Willow spent a lazy afternoon by the creek, soaking their feet in the cool water and talking about the future. I have been thinking, Nathan said. After the baby is born and you have had time to recover, maybe we should take a trip. Go visit your aunt in Hallbrook, see if she is there. Even if she is not, you might want to see the town, make some connections with other women. I know it gets lonely out here with just me for company. I am not lonely, Willow said, surprised. I have you, that is enough. Still, it would be good for you to have friends, and the baby should know people besides just their parents. Willow considered this. Nathan was right, of course. She could not keep her child isolated in the mountains forever. They would need community, connection to the wider world. All right, she agreed. When I have recovered, we will make a trip, but not for too long. I like our cabin, I like our life. So do I, Nathan said, leaning over to kiss her. His hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the baby move beneath his palm. So do I. The first labor pains came on a sultry August night, waking Willow from a restless sleep. At first she thought it was just the usual discomfort of late pregnancy, but as the pains grew stronger and more regular, she knew it was time. She shook Nathan awake. The baby is coming. Nathan was on his feet in an instant, pulling on his pants and boots with frantic speed. Now. It is coming now. Yes, now, we need to get to town. Right, town, okay. Nathan ran his hands through his hair, looking almost panicked, which would have been funny if Willow had not been gripped by another contraction. She breathed through it, counting slowly until it passed. Nathan, breathe. We have time. First babies take a while. Help me get dressed and then we will ride to Snowflake. It took them an hour to prepare and make the journey, and by the time they reached Dr. Ackerman's house, Willow's contractions were coming hard and fast. The doctor took one look at her and said, "Get her inside. This baby is not waiting." The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Dr. Ackerman's wife helped, murmuring encouragement while Nathan held Willow's hand so tightly she thought he might break her fingers. She screamed, she cursed, she cried, and through it all Nathan was there, his face pale but his presence steady. "You can do this," he kept saying. "You are so strong, Willow, you can do this." And she did. As dawn light filtered through the windows, their son came into the world with a lusty cry that made both parents laugh through their tears. Dr. Ackerman placed the baby on Willow's chest, and she looked down at the small, squirming, perfect person they had made. "A boy," Nathan said, his voice choked with emotion. "We have a son." "Thomas," Willow said, remembering their conversation. "His name is Thomas." "Thomas Keller," Nathan agreed, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Welcome to the world, Thomas." They stayed in town for 2 weeks, renting a room above the general store while Willow recovered. Nathan was a doting father, constantly holding Thomas, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, pacing the floor at night when the baby cried. Willow watched him fall in love with their son and felt her own love for her husband grow even deeper. "You are a natural," she told him one night as he rocked Thomas to sleep. "He is so small," Nathan said in wonder. "How can something so small be so perfect?" When they finally returned to the cabin in September, it felt like coming home in a new way. This was where they would raise their son, where he would take his first steps and say his first words. Willow stood in the doorway with Thomas in her arms, looking at the simple room that had become her whole world, and felt a fierce surge of gratitude. The first year of Thomas's life passed in an exhausting, joyful blur. He was a healthy baby, growing quickly, hitting all the milestones that Dr. Ackerman had told them to watch for. Nathan was a devoted father, strapping Thomas to his chest in a carrier Willow had sewn so the baby could go with him on short trips to check the nearby traps. Willow loved to watch them together, her two favorite people in the world. When Thomas was 8 months old, they finally made the trip to Holbrook. Nathan arranged for them to stay at a boarding house, a clean, respectable place run by a widow named Mrs. Chen. The first thing Willow did was inquire about her aunt. The news was not good. Mrs. Margaret Porter had indeed been a resident of the Imperial Hotel when it burned. She had died in the fire, along with 3 other people. Willow felt a pang of grief for the aunt she had never met, for the connection that might have been. "At least now you know," Nathan said gently, holding her as she cried. "And you have us. You have me and Thomas. We are your family now." "I know," Willow said, wiping her eyes. "I know, and I am grateful for that, but I still wish I could have known her." They spent a week in Holbrook, exploring the town and meeting people. Willow was surprised by how much she enjoyed the bustle and activity after months of isolation. There was a small school in Holbrook, and she visited it, talking to the teacher, a young woman named Miss Sarah Carter. They became fast friends, and when Sarah learned that Willow had teaching aspirations, she was enthusiastic. "We need more teachers out here," Sarah said. "If you are serious about it, you should consider training. There are programs, correspondence courses you can take. I could help you." "Really?" Willow felt a spark of hope. "You think I could do it? I know you could. You are clearly educated and passionate. That is half the battle." Willow discussed it with Nathan that night, nervous about his reaction, but Nathan surprised her by being immediately supportive. "If that is what you want, we will make it happen. We can move to Holbrook if we need to, be close to the school, or you can study by correspondence and teach part-time, whatever works for you and our family. You would move to town for me. I would do anything for you, Willow. You and Thomas are my whole world. If you need to be in town to follow your dream, then we will be in town." They returned to the cabin with much to think about. Over the next year, Willow began a correspondence course in teaching methods, studying in the evenings after Thomas went to bed. It was challenging work on top of caring for a baby and maintaining their household, but Willow loved it. She loved learning, loved the feeling that she was building toward something. Nathan supported her completely, taking on more of the childcare duties so she could study. He never complained, never made her feel guilty for pursuing her dreams, and when she passed her exams and received her teaching certificate in the mail, he was as proud as if he had earned it himself. "You did it," he said, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around. "My wife, the teacher." "I am certified, but I do not have a job yet," Willow pointed out, laughing. "You will. Sarah said they are always looking for teachers. We will make this work, I promise." True to his word, Nathan began making plans to move the family to Holbrook. He sold his trap line to another hunter and found work as a scout and tracker for the local sheriff's office, a job that would provide steady income and keep him close to home. They rented a small house on the edge of town, and Willow took a position as an assistant teacher at the school, working half days so she could still be home with Thomas in the afternoons. It was an adjustment, living in town after years in the cabin, but they made it work. Nathan missed the solitude sometimes, but he never regretted the move. Watching Willow thrive in her new role, seeing her face light up when she talked about her students, was worth any sacrifice. Thomas grew into a bright, curious toddler, always asking questions, always wanting to explore. He had Nathan's gray eyes and Willow's dark hair, and he was the light of both their lives. When he turned 2, Willow discovered she was pregnant again. "I was starting to think Thomas would be an only child," she said, her hand resting on her still flat belly. "Nope. He gets a brother or sister," Nathan said, grinning. "Our family keeps growing." Their daughter was born in the spring of 1889, an easy birth compared to Thomas's. They named her Clara after Nathan's first wife, a gesture that meant more to Nathan than he could put into words. Little Clara was a calm, sweet baby, the opposite of her energetic brother in every way. "2 children," Nathan said one night, standing in the doorway of the room where both children slept. "I have 2 children and a wife I love more than life itself. How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Willow said, slipping her arm around his waist. "I think about that night in the storm sometimes, about how close I came to dying, and then you found me. You saved me, Nathan, in every way a person can be saved. You saved me too," Nathan said quietly. "I was just existing before you, not really living. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to keep going. You and the children are everything to me." Life in Hallbrook settled into a comfortable pattern. Willow taught at the school, eventually becoming the head teacher when Miss Carter married and moved away. Nathan worked for the sheriff's office, using his tracking skills to help find lost travelers or track down the occasional outlaw. They were respected members of the community, known for their kindness and hard work. Thomas started school when he turned 6, a bright student who loved books just like his mother. Clara was a quiet, thoughtful child who preferred drawing and singing to running and playing. They were different as night and day, but they adored each other. When Thomas was 8 and Clara was 6, Willow discovered she was pregnant again. "I thought we were done," she said with a laugh. "Apparently not," Nathan said, but he was smiling. "Our family just keeps getting bigger." Their second son was born in the fall of 1895. A squalling, red-faced baby they named James. He grew into a wild, adventurous child who gave them all gray hairs with his antics. But he was also sweet-natured and loving, and he completed their family in a way Willow had not known was missing. The years passed, marked by the rhythms of family life. School plays and church socials, birthdays and holidays, scraped knees and childhood illnesses, laughter and tears, and 1,000 small moments that made up a life. Nathan and Willow grew older together, the lines around their eyes deepening, gray threading through their hair, but their love never wavered. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Willow with a trip back to the cabin. They left the children with friends and rode out together on a beautiful October day, the air crisp and cool, the aspens blazing gold against the dark pines. The cabin was still standing, though they had not been back in years. Nathan pushed open the door and they stepped inside, breathing in the familiar smell of wood smoke and pine. Everything was smaller than Willow remembered, but the memories were huge, flooding back with overwhelming clarity. "This is where it all started," Nathan said, his arm around her waist. "This is where I brought a frozen woman and fell in love. This is where you saved my life and gave me a future," Willow said, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Nathan, look at what we have built together. 3 beautiful children, a home, a life. All because you rode out into a snowstorm to search for someone you did not even know." "Best decision I ever made," Nathan said, turning her to face him. "Marrying you, building this life with you, it has been the greatest adventure of my life. I love you, Willow Keller. I loved you 15 years ago, and I love you now, and I will love you until my last breath." "I love you too," Willow said, kissing him. "Always and forever." They made love in the cabin one last time, slowly and tenderly, a celebration of everything they had been through together. Afterward, they lay tangled in the blankets they had brought, talking about the past and the future. "You ever regret it?" Nathan asked. "Marrying me so quickly, giving up the chance to see more of the world, to have other options?" "Never," Willow said firmly. "Not for one single moment. You gave me everything I ever wanted, Nathan. A home, a family, a purpose. I would not change a thing. Good. Because I would not change anything either. Except maybe I would have found you sooner, had more years with you." They rode back to Holbrook the next day, back to their children and their busy life, but they carried the memory of that day with them. It was a reminder of how far they had come, of the love that had sustained them through hard times and good. The children grew and flourished. Thomas went to university in Flagstaff, studying to be a lawyer. Clara married a kind young man who ran the local mercantile and gave Willow and Nathan their first grandchild, a girl they named Willow. James followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a scout and tracker, restless and adventurous but always coming home to visit. As the new century dawned, Nathan and Willow found themselves alone again, the children grown and gone. But it was not the lonely solitude Nathan had known before Willow. This was a comfortable companionship, two people who had lived a life together and had no regrets. They were sitting on the porch of their house one evening in the summer of 1905, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Willow's hair was more gray than dark now, and Nathan's face was deeply lined, but when he looked at her, he still saw the beautiful woman he had pulled from the snow all those years ago. "You remember what I said that first day?" Nathan asked. "When you thanked me for saving you." "You said you had been lonely too," Willow recalled, "that you understood what it was like to be alone." "We are not alone anymore," Nathan said, taking her hand. "We have each other, we have our children and grandchildren, we have this life we built together. I am not lonely anymore, Willow." "Not even a little bit." "Neither am I," Willow said, squeezing his hand. "You are my home, Nathan Keller. You always have been." They sat together in the gathering dusk, two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and had chosen to build a life together. Behind them, through the open window, they could hear the sounds of their granddaughter playing inside, where she was visiting for the summer. It was a good life, a full life, and they were grateful for every moment of it. When Nathan passed away in the spring of 1912, at the age of 74, it was peacefully in his sleep with Willow beside him. She held his hand as he took his last breath and felt her heart break, even as she knew he was at peace. He had lived a good life, had been a good man, and she had loved him with every fiber of her being. Willow lived another 8 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, teaching right up until the end because it gave her purpose and joy. She told stories about Nathan to anyone who would listen, keeping his memory alive. And when she died in the autumn of 1920 at the age of 68, her last words were, "I am coming home, Nathan. Wait for me." They buried her beside him in the Holbrook Cemetery, their graves marked with a simple stone that read, "Nathan and Willow Keller, together forever." And on the day of her funeral, her children stood at the graveside and told the story of how their parents had met, of the snowstorm and the lonely cowboy who had saved a dying woman and found love in the process. Thomas, now a successful lawyer with his own family, spoke last. "Our father used to say that he saved our mother from the snow, but mother always said it was the other way around. That father saved her from freezing, but she saved him from loneliness. I think they were both right. They saved each other, and in doing so, they gave us all the greatest gift we could ask for. A family built on love." The grandchildren placed flowers on the grave, and as the family walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the cemetery in golden light. It was as if the universe itself, was acknowledging the love story that had unfolded over nearly 3 decades. A love that had started with a simple act of kindness and had grown into something beautiful and lasting. In the town of Snowflake, the old cabin where Nathan and Willow had first fallen in love still stood, weathered and empty but sturdy. Sometimes hikers would stumble across it and wonder about the people who had lived there. They could not know the story, could not know about the woman who had been abandoned in a snowstorm or the lonely cowboy who had saved her. But the cabin remembered. The walls held the echoes of laughter and love, of whispered conversations and shared dreams. And on snowy winter nights, when the wind howled down from the mountains, it was said you could sometimes hear the sound of a man's voice saying, "I got you now. You are not dying today," and a woman's voice answering, "I love you too." The story of Nathan and Willow Keller became part of local legend, passed down through generations. It was a reminder that love could be found in the most unexpected places, that kindness could change a life, and that two lonely souls could find each other, even in the midst of a storm. Their grandchildren told the story to their children, and their children told it to their children, and so the legacy continued. Years later, when the cabin finally fell into ruin, worn down by time and weather, a local historical society placed a marker on the spot. It read, "Here stood the home of Nathan and Willow Keller, whose love story began in a snowstorm in 1884 and lasted a lifetime. May we all be so lucky to find such love." And that was the truth of it, the heart of the story. Two people who had been alone and lost had found each other against all odds and had built a life together filled with love, family, and purpose. They had faced hardships and challenges, as everyone does, but they had faced them together. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the big, dramatic moments, but the small, everyday choices to love each other, to support each other, to build something lasting and true. Nathan and Willow's children carried on their legacy. Thomas became a prominent lawyer who fought for justice for the underserved, inspired by his mother's belief in education and opportunity for all. Clara opened a school for girls in a time when such opportunities were rare, passing on the love of learning she had inherited from her mother. James became a respected guide and tracker who helped countless lost travelers find their way home, following in his father's footsteps. Their grandchildren spread across the country, carrying the story of Nathan and Willow with them, telling it to their own children as an example of what true love looked like. And every time the story was told, it was with reverence and gratitude, because Nathan and Willow had not just built a life together. They had built a family, a legacy, a testament to the power of love to transform and redeem. In the end, that is what endured. Not the hardships or the struggles, but the love. The love that had started with a simple act of kindness on a snowy night and had grown into something vast and unshakable. The love that had sustained them through decades of life together. The love that had created a family and a legacy that would last for generations. And somewhere, in whatever place awaited beyond this life, Nathan and Willow were together again, holding hands and smiling, knowing that they had lived well and loved deeply and left behind something beautiful. They had taken the loneliness and pain they had both carried and had transformed it into joy and purpose. They had saved each other, and in doing so, had created something that would never be forgotten. The last descendant of Nathan and Willow to visit the site of the old cabin came in the spring of 1984, exactly 100 years after that fateful snowstorm. She was a great-great-granddaughter named Willow, named after the woman whose story had shaped their entire family. She stood on the spot where the cabin had once been, reading the historical marker, and felt the weight of history and love surrounding her. She thought about her great-great-grandmother, A woman she had never met, but felt she knew through the stories. A woman who had been abandoned and left to die, but had survived through sheer determination and the kindness of a stranger. A woman who had built a life from nothing and had given everything to her family. A woman who had loved deeply and been deeply loved in return. And she thought about her great-great-grandfather, the lonely cowboy who had ridden out into a storm to search for someone he did not know, who had opened his heart and his home to a stranger, who had found love when he least expected it, and had cherished it for the rest of his life. Their story was one worth remembering, worth honoring, worth passing on, because at its core, it was a story about hope, about second chances, about the transformative power of love and kindness, about two people who had been broken by life but had found each other and had become whole. As the sun set on that spring evening, casting long shadows across the mountain meadow, the young Willow made a promise. She would tell this story to her own children someday. She would make sure that Nathan and Willow Keller were never forgotten, that their love story lived on as a reminder of what was possible when two souls connected in the midst of darkness and chose to walk toward the light together. And with that promise made, she turned and walked back down the mountain, carrying the legacy of her ancestors in her heart, knowing that she was part of something larger than herself. She was part of a love story that had started in a snowstorm 100 years ago and would continue for generations to come, a testament to the enduring power of love, hope, and the courage to open your heart even when you have been hurt before. Nathan and Willow's story was complete, their lives lived fully and their love eternal. And in the end, that was all that anyone could ask for. A life well lived, a love well loved, and a legacy that would never be forgotten.